right. Well, Sean Lane, happy Monday, my friend. Welcome to our new series, Coffee Chats. Everybody has this same motion on a Monday morning. We're getting moving, we're getting caffeinated. Why not talk a little bit of shop just to kind of get things flowing, which is exactly what we're going to do here. So,
That's how
uh,
I start every Monday morning anyways, Brad. I'm ready to go.
right, we jump in, we get a little caffeine, maybe we jump into WizOps, we talk shop with folks, and then we start really grinding the gears. But before we get too far into this, Sean Lane, would love for you to introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Happy to be here. My name's Sean Lane. I am one of the founding partners at BeaconGTM. We help founders and revenue leaders to improve their go-to-market execution. I'm one of three. One of my partners is a former sales leader, one's a former customer leader, and then my background is on the ops side. So between the three of us, we've got a good chunk of the go-to-market spectrum covered.
I love it. We're going to talk a lot about Beacon through this chat, but I'd be remiss not to say we just did a really cool engagement with Beacon on all things. How do we look at new buyer personas? We'll talk about some of that stuff, but can't say enough good things about you, Nish, Michelle, everybody that our
Thank
team
you.
has worked with on your side. Absolutely love you guys.
Right back at
Love
you.
working. Awesome. Well, like I said, man, we're getting caffeinated. Fun part about coffee chats is we got fun, unique coffee mugs. What do I have today? Drinking out of a lovely Stowe, Vermont ski coffee mug. We're getting close to ski
Nice.
season, so a
Yes.
little closer to you as well. So,
Yeah.
what are we sipping on over there?
I've got my Some Good News coffee. I don't know if you remember this during COVID. John Krasinski hosted that like Some Good News show that came out once a week, and it was like my favorite thing that came out of COVID. And so much so that I bought a mug. I think I have a sweatshirt somewhere. So I got all into it, and so I use this one quite a bit.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So good. I do remember that whole series. And you talk about a time where we're all sitting at home, we can't get out
Yeah.
of our house. We need some good news. Lovely, lovely thing he was doing there. All right. As a little like preset for everybody, because you and I have known each other for too long. I was thinking about this ahead of today. I don't think we collectively have enough fingers and toes for the number of times we've probably recorded a
Yeah.
webinar, a coffee chat, something along the lines. But I've known you forever, but I'm not sure everybody knows sort of your background and some of your ops superpowers. So let's start there. What do you feel as I can gloat about you all day long and brag about you, but what do you feel like your ops superpower is if you had to sum it up?
It's a good question. I think honestly, it's been more about like the partnerships and the relationships that I've formed with my internal customers, right? I think, I very vividly remember interviewing someone for a team a couple companies ago, and we were doing the debrief, and the CRO was on the interview team, and he came back and he was like, you know what I'm really excited about this candidate? Like, they actually like salespeople. And like it was remarkable that like that was so unique to him that he felt the need to call it out in the debrief. And so I don't know, from that moment on, I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna have really good relationships with my internal customers. And I think hopefully, that none of them have been perfect, but that kind of foundational trust that I've had with those different go-to-market leaders and partners is um, been a contributing factor to what I've been able to do.
I couldn't agree more. I think that is probably a superpower, candidly, that a lot of people don't index on enough, whether it be in interview processes or just in a leadership mentality in general. I can speak to this because we've been, even during your time at Drift, as a customer of ours, I remember your team just singing your praises. And a lot of that has to do with leadership styles and just making sure that people know, like, yes, I'm not just a robot behind the scenes over here
Mm.
configuring Salesforce or connected apps. I'm actually trying to be empathetic and make your day in life and the mile you're walking a lot easier. But that just was interpersonal skills and just bringing in that engagement and empathy that you can have. So good. So, cruising through. This is always a fun one, and you're welcome to throw us under the bus if you need a really good example. But describe the last org you walked into in 3 words.
Oh gosh. I think I'll just use our own at Beacon. It's been about a year for me. And so, I would say early, uh, scrambled, uh, and ambitious, right? I think we were still very early when I got here a year ago, figuring things out. And so, you can imagine when you drop the ops guy into a small team of three, we start using some systems a little bit more. But yeah, that's been really fun to be back in building mode again. I miss that a lot.
Yeah. What's interesting? There's only a handful of folks I can say this about. And I used to always be envious of people that had the opportunity to hit start on their CRM from scratch.
Mm,
99.9% of us, right? We all inherit that board. Like
yeah,
I was excited the day Jack and I started Sonar. I was like, I am spinning up Salesforce right now for the first time, and it's gonna stay
yeah.
clean and it's gonna be perfect. LOL. It didn't stay clean. It's definitely not perfect. Nobody's org is. But like you're probably one of the few people too that I've had that conversation with that had the opportunity to hit start from day one.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. It's nice to be able to kind of one define it, but also feel like a lot of the decisions, we're just a small go-to-market consulting group, but like any company, a lot of those decisions early on have multi-year ripple effects. And so, when people are like, when should we invest in ops or when should we hire ops people? It's like, well, these decisions that you're making right now, these foundational decisions are going to stick with you for a while. And so it makes sense to have folks who are going to be thoughtful and look around corners and not feel like you're going to have to tear everything down in 2 years and start again.
Yeah, I've now kind of rekeyed that conversation to a lot of folks. Like, oh, when should I hire my first ops person, or when should I invest in this? It's like, you know what the cheapest investment is right now? It's $0. Just invest in the right mindset for setting up your orgs. Bring in a RevOps framework. We're going to talk about that in a second too, but
Hmm.
bring that mentality in first. That's free. That does not cost you a dime, but bring that in
Hmm.
first. And the minute you start getting too flexed out of that position, maybe you're answering your own question, and maybe that's when
Hmm.
you invest in somebody to come in and own it and manage it. So, all right, we are gonna flip over to like the last big project that you did. And again, feel free to throw us under the bus if ours was the worst one. But when you think about some of your big projects, what was it? What is it that you guys are doing on the Beacon side, and how did that project go?
Yeah, I think a really common one that we're seeing right now is folks that have been so new business focused and so new logo acquisition focused, and they all of a sudden wake up and they're like, I don't know what happens at renewal. Like, I don't know whether we upsell, cross sell, and they have not instrumented their Salesforce or set up any of the processes to make that easy to both run if you're the people who are in charge of running the renewals, but also in terms of measuring it. So we've spent a bunch of time with multiple clients actually putting the renewal infrastructure in place. How much is up for renewal on a given deal? What is the new value of this contract? So what's the change? And then putting in fields that are going to make it easier for you as an operator later to calculate things like GRR and NRR, which people are inevitably going to ask you to do. And I think that comes from me not having done that well earlier in my career and learning from those mistakes and then doing it better now. Because I think in particular, when it comes to measuring retention and anything that happens post sale, to your point, if you're not thoughtful about the way you design that and think about the things you're going to need to measure later, measuring retention can be really, really hard. But when you do it this new way and you have put these things in place, and we've done it now a number of times with a bunch of different clients, like it's actually really easy to get the answers to those questions. And so there's a lot of thought that has to happen there. And it's understandable. Companies are focused on like the lifeblood of getting new business in the door. And so they like over instrument, they know everything that's happening in that new logo funnel. And they don't really know what happens after that. And so helping them find and spend time there is really helpful.
Couldn't agree more. I think I find it the most interesting, and I've watched this in different environments, our own included, right? So, but running ops in different places, yeah, there's just a ton of focus. And the a majority lion's share of the focus goes into how do we go get that new logo? And what can we do to make that path have zero resistance? How do we make it easy just to get them in the door? And sadly, and I am guilty of this, so I will throw the first stone. Sadly, we make some decisions in that process that help us, but end up hindering us 365 days from now when we have to have that renewal conversation. And some of
Yeah.
that comes down to pricing and packaging. Some of it comes down to technical nuance. How do we create the quote? How do we send that to them? A year from now, is that quote going to look the same? Because our customer expects it to kind of look the same.
Mm.
So, just being mindful of that, to sound too cliche, begin with the end in mind. We'll go all through all 7 habits here in a little bit, but I'm kidding. But you have to think about that. Like, is the decision I'm making right now going to be great for the renewal process 365 days from now?
Yeah.
And I love that you guys have that forward thinking of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's cliche, but most retention problems are solved further upstream, right?
Yeah,
Like that's where that's where the problems begin, and that's where they'll typically, be the catalyst for when things don't go well later down the road.
totally. Totally. All right, we're going to switch a little gears. We're going to come back to some beacon talk. But you have such a unique lens for the journey that we've been on with Sonar. So we're going to dig into that for a few minutes.
Mhm.
And people have probably heard this in other webinars that we've done, but true story, I can probably think of a few other people, definitely on one hand, who got to see Sonar first, and you were one of them. And this is when Jack and I were still scrappy. I don't even, did we have a website? We might have not even had a website at the time.
Yeah, I don't think it was public yet.
No, we were still in stealth mode and we were doing everything fun. But you have watched this journey, and we were catching up on this before starting the recording, so I'll let you kind of jump in and take it. But it's been a unique journey for you to watch. Our focus areas, continue to shift and mold and shape. And we start with our core centric Salesforce admin, RevOps manager, application
Mhm.
architect. But as we are now seeing a lot of this open up into more connected apps, security forward focus, curious to get a couple of your opinions on the journey we've been on, some of your favorite functionality, and some of the favorite features that we have, and where you think we're going.
Yeah, I mean, we were a customer for a long time, even after you showed me that when I was at Drift. Um, and so I can talk about kind of what I liked then and then what I like now. And so I think what I liked then was Sonar was kind of like our peace of mind, right? I didn't need to use it every day, but when I needed it, it was there for me and it solved whatever problem I had. And so that for me was the best version of using Sonar because when you're in a pickle and things aren't going the way you expect, or something broke that someone didn't anticipate, or you're trying to plan ahead so something doesn't break, that was the best version of it, right? Hey, how is this field going to impact this other field? What's the workflow that keeps updating this field that I didn't know about or somebody else built? Like that was the best kind of like fast investigatory troubleshooting option that I had like in my, quiver of arrows. So that for me was always my kind of go-to. Having worked with you guys now through Beacon and seeing what some of the newer stuff is, there are two things that I like in particular. One, I love the fact that you kind of expanded to these other connected apps, and I can see them when I go into Sonar and see both the fact that those exist, but also where the data is going. Like, what is the direction of how data moves between all these different systems? I think we as operators will spend time and hopefully invest in like mapping out how these integrations work, but like now I don't have to because you guys just do it for me, right? And I can see it there. So just having that visual of all the different apps, like huge, I think, for any operator. And I also think just kind of expanding into some of the more security use cases, like it's not something that I, as a RevOps person, spend enough time thinking about. And so having you all there both to remind me, but also to bring in my other partners in IT and security to say, hey, this is a new lens that we have on this to help us identify, potential weaknesses that we might have within our infrastructure. So I think that is a really interesting thing because, ops people probably don't spend as much time with their IT and security folks as they should, especially if you're more on the go-to-market side. And so this is a good kind of both reminder and a way to strengthen those other partnerships. So yeah, I'm pumped to see how the things have evolved over the years.
Yeah, me too. I really appreciate the kind words on that. And the one thing that I'll just quickly kind of index on with it, and I know as a traditional RevOps guy myself, like you said it best, security is typically not at the forefront of what we're focusing on. And I think the thing that I've always said, and now I'll say it again too, is yet. And I think now we're in 2024. Stop me if you've heard anything about AI going on right now.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a buzzword, and rightfully so. But everybody should be super focused about where their data is going and who has access to it. And we're starting at the top of that. We're seeing Salesforce and a lot of their campaigns and pitches, and you see the Matthew McConaughey commercials. Data
Yeah.
is the new gold. I love it. I love the strategy. I love that that is how they're focusing on it because it's so true. Like where your data is and where it's stored and how it's stored and who has access to it, both internal resources and external applications and company is gonna matter. And it still matters. It currently matters. It's only gonna get more important. So
Keith Jones, who you introduced me to, who runs ops at OpenAI, like we had him on our show, and the kind of like prerequisite to any of the use cases that he described was you have to make sure you're doing this in a secure way, right? Like forget about all the cool, shiny stuff. Like these use cases are amazing. But before you can do that, you need to be confident in the way that you are passing information, that it is secure, and that you're doing it in a smart way. And so, like, to hear that from someone like him illustrates how important it is. And so, it's not something we can just gloss over as operators.
No, no, absolutely not. And shout out to Keith, one of the most like legendary ops guys out there. I'm fortunate. He's a very, very close friend of mine, along with you. I actually get to see him this weekend. I'm heading up to New York and gonna hang out with him and his
Nice.
fiance. So super
Nice.
pumped to see him. So all right, we're gonna switch gears now back. We're gonna swing that pendulum back over to Beacon. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think you guys have some exciting news with some stuff coming out, something you've been working on. Tell us the latest and greatest.
Yeah, so I wrote a book, Brad, which is pretty exciting. So the book's called The Revenue Operations Manual. Wrote it with a woman named Laura Aiden, who was actually my boss for a little while when I was at Drift. And the book very much champions the operator, right? Champions folks that you and I like spending time with and working with and talking to, and really puts the work that they do at center stage, right? We kind of have come to believe that these folks are like the central connectors in an organization. And I think people have come around to the fact that there's value in having a team like this, but there isn't much out there of around like, how do you then take this thing that everyone kind of believes in and turn it into the best possible world-class version of itself? And so that's hopefully what the book is. We've got interviews with more than 50 different operators from a whole bunch of different industries. We have versions of both like great role models, but also some confession corners tales that you helped us contribute to when things don't quite go according to plan. And so, yeah, we're super excited to get it out there into the world and into the hands of as many operators as possible.
I love it. Well, I'll tell you this, we're going to do a good job of spreading that word.
Thank you.
Sean gave me a heads up on it already, but for everybody watching this, and especially we'll be posting a lot about this on LinkedIn and throughout the WizOps community, we're going to include a lovely little promo code that if you want to get a copy of that book, you can get a discounted price of it. So be sure to click the links. I think this is how the cool YouTubers do it now. Check the links in the comments or subscribe up here. But we are going to
Works for
get
me.
that word out. Yeah, it's such a good book. I'm pumped to get my hands on it. I know you just posted recently about actually getting the box and physically being
Yeah,
able to see the
that's
books
cool.
that you guys put so much hard work into that, and kudos to you guys for getting it out. I'm pumped to read it. So
Thank you very much.
um, I've got about 2 sips left in my coffee, so we'll start winding it down. But my biggest question now is we've talked a lot about ops, clearly. What do you think is that next big thing that in the future of RevOps is about to happen? Could be this year, could be next, could be a decade from now. But what do you think that next big meaty topic or meaty thing is that we're going to
Yeah.
experience in revenue operations?
So hopefully, like with things like the book, the value of this organization will only continue to be cemented and increased, right? And the perceived value from other people about RevOps will only continue to go up. I think you mentioned the big elephant in the room with AI. The thing that I think about the most with AI, and obviously you and I are biased because we think about ops people first, but I think that the folks that have the most to gain in this new AI powered go to market world are operators. And the reason I think that is I think that companies are going to look to ops people to inject their own creativity into how these technologies can actually be put to use. I think we talk a lot at Beacon about like these kind of disciplined foundations in your business. I don't think those are changing. And then every company has outcomes that they are trying to drive to: more dollars, higher revenue, higher productivity, lower, higher retention. But like the means of getting from those foundations to those outcomes, those are changing, right? If the foundations stay the same and the outcomes stay the same, the means to connect the two of those, I think, are changing literally right now. And I think operators stand to be the folks who can put those changes to the best use.
I agree. I love it. I heard somebody use this word in an analogous form of it, and I loved it. I think operations is going to become the new governor for all AI related applications that we start to use and the strategy behind it. And the
Mm-hmm.
context that somebody was saying that in was there's a lot of AI out there. I think every application now probably has a flavor of it. And not to say we need to be able to sniff through some of the good or bad ones, but it's really going to come down to we need to go get this thing done. We need to leverage more technology to do it. And there's this big channel between it of how do we go and get there. And I think you're going to see a lot of operations folks roll those sleeves up, start figuring out how to configure some of these softwares, how to start engaging with them in a strategic manner, not necessarily just to help me auto write an email or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but really how to reduce the friction, increase the efficiency, and at the end of the day, hit those KPIs, the ones that you mentioned, whether it be more revenue, better retention, more efficiency. we have to measure those now. And I think we're all starting to kind of round this corner of the adoption side. None of us are going to be laggards and say AI is terrible. Nobody wants to use it. I think we're all there, but I think it's going to take that creative operations mind to be able to configure it into the way the business needs it and make it actually work successfully for them. I couldn't agree with you more, man.
And by the way, if you listen back to everything you just said, like none of that is new. The
No,
means that are available to us are new, but like the actual work and the type of thinking and how you approach the work, like that's all the same.
no,
It's just we all of a sudden have new tools at our disposal that we didn't have before.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the cool part of it, as we start to wrap up, I think operations folks are going to be set up for success with this, not only because they're going to have a copy of your book and they're going to be able to read the owner's manual and the Bible of which we're going to do RevOps on, but we are going to be supported by more technology. And I truly do think, we talk a lot about seat at the table and things. I think more now than ever, you're going to see RevOps play that important role because they are going to be that problem solver, the strategic thinker that we've all signed up for to be in an ops role. I think you're
Mhm.
going to get a chance to shine pretty soon because we're going to rely so heavily on ops to get that shit done, which I
Mhm.
love. So, man, time flies when we're having fun. I know we got about 30 seconds probably till you have to jump over to your next
Yeah.
meeting, as do I. So I'll take my last sip of coffee. Cheers, you, my friend. Can't thank you enough for always being on the show and hanging out with us. Can't say enough good things about you and the Beacon team. We love you guys, appreciate you, and I'm pumped to get this book in my hands and out into the world for everybody to be able to benefit from it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having me on.
Awesome, Sean. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon, buddy. Take care. Have a good week.
You too.